Else Nutrition, the company that I coined as the Tesla of the baby formula industry, recently had an investor conference where they shared some phenomenal news. In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the key items from that conference, as well as why Else Nutrition is set to take off massively in 2022. Hi, my name is Andrew Clarke, and I'm the CEO of Expanding Wallet. The mission with Expanding Wallet is to help you learn skills for creating generational wealth. And I've been investing for over a decade, and some of my investments include real estate, stocks, and even some private equity investments. In this video, I'll share some of the big news that was revealed in the Else Nutrition conference call. Then, I'll share my thoughts on the stock price in 2022. And lastly, I'll share my thoughts on the company's outlook in 2022. If you're not familiar with Else Nutrition, they're a massive industry disruptor in the baby formula space. They created the very first plant-based, non-dairy, non-soy baby formula product. And this is huge for parents who have children who are allergic to dairy and soy. If you want to see a breakdown of Else Nutrition and their past accomplishments, then check the link in the description below under recommended videos. All right, so let's dive into this investor conference. So in the Else Nutrition Investor Conference, they shared 5 key pieces of information that highlight why Else Nutrition is set to take off in 2022. Now, before I jump into describing each of these 5 key pieces of information to you, I want to actually tell you how this investor conference started when Else Nutrition CEO got on, Hamutal Yitzhak. She was on fire. And what I mean is she came out talking about that they want to exponentially grow the business and that they want to be a multi-billion-dollar company and a top 5 global leader in the infant nutrition space. And as an investor, that's the way I like to see a CEO come out on fire. And that also just kind of made me think, okay, we're going to see some big news today. So the first big news is that Else Nutrition receives conditional approval to graduate to the Toronto Stock Exchange. Now, what that means is that they were traded on a smaller exchange in Canada, and so now they're going to go to a larger exchange, the Toronto Stock Exchange. And that's great for them because it'll give them more exposure to institutional investors. And this is set to happen January 20th or before of 2022. And for us in America, that doesn't really change anything as far as how we're going to purchase or sell the stock. It's still going to be traded on the over-the-counter market known as OTC. Now, they did also talk about potentially uplisting to NASDAQ in the future. However, they said that's going to be based on revenue growth. And so they'll be watching the revenue growth quarter after quarter going forward. And so there's no set timeline on when uplisting to NASDAQ could happen. But again, this is still a win for them. And like I said, the news got better and better as we go. So let's hop into the second item that they talked about. Okay, and here's the second piece of information is that Else Nutrition is expanding sales into Europe with Amazon. Now, here's the interesting part about this is that Amazon actually reached out to Else directly and offered this expansion to them, invited them to expand with Amazon into Europe. Now, they did this because Amazon actually had some internal information showing how Else was doing phenomenal in comparison to other infant baby formula companies in their industry. So basically their sales numbers were beating out their competitors on Amazon. And so this is really a win for both Amazon and Else. And what's cool about this is that Else going into Europe with Amazon, that's going to give them exposure to major countries in Europe like the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands and Sweden. And that's potentially going to show up now. Else is going to be seen by 300 million people. And so Else is planning this launch starting in Q1 of 2022. So this is right around the corner. Now, if that wasn't big enough news, here's the third piece. Not only are they going into Europe with Amazon, but they're also planning on launching into Canada in quarter one of 2022. In addition, they're also planning on going into Australia the second half of 2022 And lastly, and probably the biggest country, which is exciting, is that they have plans to go into China in Q3 of 2022. Massive. China has 1.4 billion people. Just think about that. I mean, we're talking, almost probably 2 billion people that they're going to have exposure to. And so the CEO was not kidding when she said that they're planning on exponential growth. And then the fourth piece of information that they released is that they're in the process of working out an agreement with one of China's largest e-commerce distributors. So that's going to be huge for them to get into China and be able to distribute their products successfully. Okay, so let's dive into this one. This is huge, okay? So there's an independent pilot study done that showed that Else Nutrition, okay, has significant improvements for major feeding-related disorders and symptoms in the large majority of children. Now, let me just read some of this word for word here because this is massive, because this is, again, an independent study showing the health benefits that Else Nutrition can have on kids. And so it says, independent pilot surveys conducted among U.S. moms using Else Nutrition products with their children revealed dramatic improvement with up to complete recovery with feeding-related disorders and symptoms, including gastrointestinal problems, vomiting, skin rashes, spit up, and abdominal growth. All right, let's just kind of scroll through a little bit. There's a few more things I want to show you here. Let's go into some of the numbers here in detail. So, okay, poor weight gain and growth issues resolved in over 82% of cases. GI-related symptoms like spitting and vomiting were resolved in over 85% of cases. And then we have bowel movement improved over 79% of the time. Now, just laugh about that, just thinking about kids and all the poop they have. Anyway, so probably good for the parents if that can be normalized or improved. And then we have rash symptoms improved in over 86% of the cases. Okay, so these numbers are really impressive, okay? And I'm sure parents are happy about that. And this last one here, I just really like. It's saying that of those surveyed, 90% of the parents said they would recommend Else Nutrition. And that's just good to see because that's free advertisement, free marketing for the company. And it just highlights them having a great product because you don't recommend things unless you love the product. Okay. And then also, big part of this is just a pilot study. However, there is a much bigger research project that is underway, and those results are supposed to be published in a peer-reviewed medical journal in 2022. Okay? And so why is that big? Well, if you remember from my other video on Else Nutrition, right now they've started an initiative to target the 80,000 pediatricians and medical professions in the U.S. And tell them about Else and how great it is. And that's huge because that's going to have them be an advocate for their product. And so a peer-reviewed medical journal highlighting the benefits of Else is going to help them with that initiative. So again, scientific evidence is going to be huge for them in this marketing plan of theirs. Okay, so besides those 5 key items, there are other things that came up in the conference call that I want to share. But before I do, I want to hear your thoughts on the 5 key items that I just mentioned. So leave a comment below and let me know what you think. I'd love to read it. In the investor conference, they addressed 2 things that I mentioned in my previous Else Nutrition video. So the first issue that they addressed was around clumping of the product and it being difficult to mix. And Hamutal Yitzhak talked about this and how in their kid product, they adjusted the density to make it easier to mix and therefore reduce or eliminate the clumping issue. And then in their toddler formula, they just needed to update the instructions on how to dissolve the product properly. And that addressed that issue. And so this is good to see as an investor because it shows that the company is actually listening to what the customers are saying and they're not ignoring the issues and they're actually addressing them. So this is massive because that increases, again, the value of the product to the customer. Okay, and the second item I had concerns on was around supply chain issues. Obviously, many industries are being affected by supply chain shortages. And so Hamutal Yitzhak addressed this as well in the conference and said that the raw materials used to make their products was not affected by shortages in the supply chain. However, she did say that where they saw significant change was in the price of transportation. However, that didn't affect the overall product pricing. So not a significant impact. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be impactful in the future, is what she said. Again, with COVID and everything else going on in the world, there is still a lot of uncertainty. And so we will see what happens with that. Before I share my thoughts on the stock price in 2022, if you're getting value out of this video, then make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any empowering information from Expanding Wallet. So let's talk about the stock outlook for 2022. And this is really just my personal opinion of where I think things can head in 2022. And I'm focusing on BABYF, which is the ticker symbol for the OTC market. Okay, so currently the stock price as of recording of this video is around $1.45. Now, the 52-week range has been from $1.08 all the way to $4. And so let's kind of focus in on that here. And so overall, currently, the plant-based industry is actually down. If you look at many of those stocks, such as Beyond Meat, they're also down pretty heavily and closer to their 52-week low as opposed to their 52-week high. Now, in regards to Else Nutrition, the fundamentals of the business thus far have been very strong. If you saw my previous video, their products have debuted #1 on Amazon, and their sales on Amazon has been amazing. 10% month-over-month growth for the last 6 months, which is phenomenal. Now, in the investor conference, Hamutal Yitzhak emphasized that this company, this is a long-term growth stock, not some short-term vision. And so it's not necessarily for short-term investors. Okay, now one thing that got brought up during the investor conference was a question on if the company would dilute shares in 2022. And Hamutal Yitzhak made it very clear that the company's #1 goal is on exponential growth and creating distance between them and their competitors. And so, yes, if needed, they would further dilute shares. Now, basically, she said that their break-even point is probably going to be 2 to 3 years out, meaning when they'll start to break even and potentially start making profits. But in order to grow, especially at the rate that they're trying to grow at and expand, substantial cash would be needed. All right, so let's talk about share dilution. And to illustrate this for you, I'm actually going to draw something. And so, sorry, art was not my best class. So let's just try this. So imagine that there's a pie and it's cut in half. And you have one part of the pie right here. This is your part. Remember, one part of the pie. Now, imagine if there's a cross-section in that pie, another line, and now going from a halves, to now quarters. Now, you still only own one part of that pie. Before you had 50% ownership, and when that next line is drawn, now you have 25% ownership. And so this is basically a simple illustration of what share dilution does. And this is why investors do not like share dilution, because it reduces their ownership. Share dilution can be a way for companies to quickly raise capital, but for investors, it is a negative because, again, it reduces ownership. However, there is the reverse of share dilution by share buybacks. So companies can actually buy the outstanding shares, and that will actually do the reverse. Now, that won't usually happen until a company is profitable. And so this wouldn't happen in Elsa's case for many years out. Like she had said, they might be profitable 2 to 3 years out. And so you probably wouldn't even expect share buybacks maybe till like year 4. However, again, the point is that at the point where they are, their focus is really on creating distance between them and their competitors. And I'll touch on that a little bit more when I get into talking about the company outlook. But for now, let's focus on the stock itself. Another thing that could affect if they need to dilute shares or not is how much cash do they have on hand. And in the conference, it got brought up that they have $23 million of cash on hand, which gives them a 12 to 15 month runway. And so if the revenue is not where they need it to be in order to fund the growth, then they said they would be diluting shares. Okay, so let's hop back to the stock price and just wrap everything up here. In my opinion, looking at the 52-week range, I don't really see the stock price exceeding that $4 or going well beyond it in 2022. And the reason is as I mentioned, share dilution is not something that investors are crazy about. So in the short term, if that does happen, I just don't see investors being crazy about Else Nutrition unless they've dug deep and really understand the fundamentals of the business and what they've accomplished and where they're headed. Aside from that, there's still a lot of uncertainty around COVID and supply shortages. So that's another potential thing that could keep the share price down. As well as we also know that they're expanding into new markets, many new markets in 1 year. And it does take time to grow in those markets and to also see the results of their work. So there is a lag between when they go into those markets and the time to get the word out and marketing and product sales. So in my opinion, as far as where we'll see the most price appreciation is probably going to be towards the end or second half of 2022. And potentially going into the beginning of 2023. For me, as a long-term growth investor, I see 2022 as a year where I can continue to build my position and buy more shares into Else Nutrition and to average down my share price, especially in the first half of 2022 as they begin to go into these newer markets. Okay, I'm curious to know what you think about Else's plan to dilute shares if needed to fund future growth, as opposed to waiting for revenues to increase to the point where the revenue can fund the future growth. Leave a comment letting me know which one you think is best and why. Alright, so now I want to discuss my thoughts on the company's outlook for 2022. First off, I just want to say I love that Hamutal Yitzhak is focused on creating distance between them and their competitors and exponentially growing the company in 2022. And I think this is huge because just think back to 3 years ago with Tesla and how much competition they had then compared to now. There wasn't nowhere near as much competition with EVs, electric vehicles, as there is now. Now there's hardly a car manufacturer out there that doesn't have an electric vehicle on the market. Plus, there's also many new manufacturers that are strictly just electric vehicles manufacturers that are coming out now. And they're very competitive now if you look at the specs as opposed to what Tesla has. And so creating this distance between competitors, especially early on when Else Nutrition is the leader and really the only plant-based, non-dairy, non-soy product out there, this is really vital for their long-term success. Okay, I think that Else has built a great foundation and proven superiority with their product from what we've seen with the pilot studies, reviews on Amazon. And I think that is great. And they've also kind of proven okay, here's how we can step by step get into these markets through what they've done in the US. And there's still work that they're doing in the US that I believe will also help them do the same in other markets, such as reaching out to the 80,000 pediatricians and physicians in the US. I think they can duplicate that process in any of those countries, especially as that study comes out in a peer-reviewed medical journal. Looking at their plan overall, I do think it is aggressive. I think that trying to get into the Chinese market in Q3 especially is where I would say it's pretty aggressive. Now, I know that there are obviously already things in the works as far as manufacturing and partnerships. And they made an emphasis because a question got brought up around manufacturing and controlling manufacturing. And Hamutal Yitzhak made it very clear that their focus is on product development and marketing. Okay, they do not want to take manufacturing in-house. Now, the benefit is that they can focus on, product development and marketing. However, the downfall is that now they lack less control. They have less control. And so when there's a heavy dependency on partnerships, sometimes you have to slow down to make sure your partners are getting things made on time and done right, and they have everything that they need to succeed. And then even then, sometimes partnerships just don't work out. The partners don't always fulfill on their agreement. And so, I think going into this many markets in 1 year is really aggressive. I don't think that they should not do it. I think that it's great, and you know what? Maybe everything works out, and that would be wonderful from an investor standpoint. However, if the China rollout were to happen in Q4 of 2022 or even got rolled into Q1 of 2023, I would still be really happy about that, especially if the results of the Canada rollout and the Europe rollout went really well as seeing increases in revenue in the US. I think that would be great. Okay, and I'm not saying that they can't do these things, because they have phenomenal leadership who understands and has already built a great foundation for the company to build and grow from. And so, I'm hopeful that they will pull all of this off. And so we'll see. If you're new to stock investing or want to be a better investor, then sign up for the waitlist for my stock investing guide with the link in the description below. And remember, to learn all that you can, believe in yourself and take actions that allow you to grow.